What happens when two of the most outspoken women in media collide on live television? Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that left producers scrambling, audience members gasping, and security rushing to intervene. This is the story of how a routine interview turned into television chaos that nobody saw coming. The morning started like any other at the View Studios in Manhattan. Production assistants hustled around with their clipboards, makeup artists prepped their stations, and the familiar hum of preparation filled the air. Joy Behar arrived early, as she always did, clutching her signature coffee mug and reviewing her notes for what was supposed to be a straightforward interview segment. The booking had come through the usual channels. Meghan Markle would be appearing to discuss her latest philanthropic endeavors and upcoming projects, another softball interview. Joy muttered to herself as she settled into her chair, adjusting the papers in front of her. She had been doing this for decades, and celebrity interviews rarely surprised her anymore. But something felt different this morning. Maybe it was the unusual secrecy surrounding the booking. Or perhaps it was the way Meghan's publicist had been unusually specific about certain topics being off limits. Behind the scenes, tension was already brewing. Meghan's team had arrived 30 minutes early, an unusual move that caught the attention of veteran producers. Her publicist, a sharp woman in an expensive suit, was making demands that raised eyebrows among the crew. No questions about the royal family, no discussion of recent controversies, and absolutely no mention of certain recent media reports that had been circulating. "We need to stick to the approved talking points," the publicist insisted, waving a document in front of the show's producer. "Ms. Markle is here to discuss her charity work and her new ventures. Nothing else." The producer, a seasoned television veteran who had seen every type of celebrity meltdown imaginable, nodded politely but made no promises. The View had built its reputation on unscripted moments and authentic conversations. Controlling the narrative wasn't exactly their style, especially when Joy Behar was involved. Meanwhile, in her dressing room, Meghan was going through her own preparations. She sat in front of the mirror as a makeup artist, carefully applied the finishing touches, but her mind was elsewhere. Recent weeks had been particularly challenging, with media scrutiny intensifying and public opinion seeming to shift. This appearance was supposed to be a chance to control the narrative, to present herself in a positive light and remind people of her humanitarian work. 5 minutes to air, came the announcement over the intercom system. Joy finished her final review of notes, though she rarely stuck to prepared questions anyway. Her style was conversational, organic, and sometimes unpredictable. That's what made her effective, and that's what kept viewers coming back. She had interviewed everyone from presidents to pop stars, and she prided herself on getting authentic responses rather than rehearsed soundbites. Meghan made her way to the set, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The studio lights were bright and warm, a familiar sensation from her acting days, but somehow more intense in this context. This wasn't a scripted scene where she could control the outcome. This was live television where anything could happen. Places everyone called the floor manager as the countdown began. The show's familiar theme music filled the studio as cameras came to life. Joy settled into her role as host, that comfortable persona she had perfected over years of live television. But as she glanced at her guest, she noticed something in Meghan's posture. A subtle tension that suggested this interview might not go according to anyone's script. "Good morning, and welcome back to The View," Joy began, her voice carrying that familiar warmth that audiences had come to expect. "We're joined today by Meghan Markle, who's here to talk about her latest projects and her ongoing commitment to humanitarian causes." Meghan smiled, that practiced expression she had learned to deploy in countless public appearances. "Thank you for having me, Joy. It's wonderful to be here. Let's start with your recent work," Joy continued, consulting her notes briefly. "You've been involved in several charitable initiatives lately. Tell us about what's been inspiring you." For the first few minutes, everything proceeded smoothly. Meghan spoke eloquently about her foundation work, her commitment to women's empowerment, and her upcoming projects. Her responses were polished, thoughtful, and exactly what her publicist had hoped for. Joy nodded along, asking follow-up questions that stayed well within the approved boundaries. But anyone who knew Joy Behar understood that she was just getting started. She had a journalist's instincts and a comedian's timing, and she could sense when someone was giving rehearsed answers rather than genuine responses. Something about Meghan's carefully crafted responses was triggering her professional curiosity. "That's all very admirable," Joy said, leaning forward slightly, "but I think our viewers are also curious about the more personal side of your journey. You've been in the public eye for years now, first as an actress, then through your marriage, and now as an independent public figure. How do you handle the constant scrutiny?" Meghan's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that viewers at home might have missed it. But Joy, sitting just feet away, caught the subtle shift in her guest's demeanor. "Well, Joy, I think anyone in the public eye learns to develop thick skin," Meghan replied, her voice still steady but with a slight edge that hadn't been there moments before. "The important thing is to stay focused on the work that matters and not get distracted by noise." "Noise," Joy repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Is that how you characterize media coverage of your life?" The studio audience was starting to sense the shift in energy. What had begun as a pleasant conversation was taking on a different tone. Meghan's publicist, watching from the wings, felt her stomach drop as she recognized the warning signs of an interview spiraling beyond her control. "I think the media landscape today is very different from what it used to be," Meghan responded carefully. "There's a lot more opinion disguised as journalism, and social media has created an environment where anyone can say anything without accountability." Joy nodded thoughtfully, but her expression suggested she wasn't entirely satisfied with the diplomatic response. "That's certainly true. But don't you think public figures have a responsibility to be transparent with the people who support them? I mean, when you put yourself in the spotlight, doesn't that come with certain obligations?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a just-lit fuse. Meghan's posture straightened slightly, and for the first time since the interview began, her carefully maintained composure showed signs of strain. "I think there's a difference between transparency and having every aspect of your private life dissected for entertainment," Meghan replied, her voice carrying a sharper edge now. "Some things should remain personal, don't you think?" Joy leaned back in her chair, studying her guest with the keen attention of someone who had just spotted an opening. The interview was about to take a turn that nobody in the studio, including Joy herself, had anticipated when the cameras started rolling. "Well, that's an interesting perspective," Joy said, her tone shifting from conversational to slightly more pointed. "But when you're living in a multi-million-dollar mansion and flying on private jets while talking about social justice, don't you think people have a right to question the authenticity of your message?" The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras and equipment. Even the production crew, who had seen countless heated exchanges over the years, seemed to hold their breath. Meghan's eyes widened slightly, and her media-trained smile completely disappeared. "Excuse me," Meghan said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. "Are you seriously suggesting that having financial success disqualifies someone from caring about social issues?" Joy shrugged, seemingly unbothered by the growing tension. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking a direct question. How do you reconcile your lifestyle with your activism? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're playing both sides of the fence." "Playing both sides?" Meghan's voice rose slightly, and she shifted forward in her chair. "Joy, I think you're making some pretty big assumptions about my life and my motivations without actually knowing the facts." "Oh, I know the facts," Joy shot back, her own voice gaining momentum. "I know you've made millions from deals that capitalize on your royal connections, while simultaneously criticizing the institution that gave you that platform. That's not an assumption, that's documented reality." The audience was now completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Meghan's publicist was frantically trying to get the attention of the show's producers, making slashing motions across her throat, but the cameras kept rolling. "You know what, Joy?" Meghan said, her composure finally cracking. "I came here thinking I could have an intelligent conversation about the work I'm doing to make a difference in the world. Instead, you're attacking me with tabloid talking points and conspiracy theories." "Conspiracy theories?" Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Everything I just said is public record. You signed multi-million-dollar deals with streaming services. You've written books and given paid speeches. You live in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in California. These aren't theories, they're facts. And what exactly is wrong with any of that?" Meghan demanded, her voice now clearly agitated. "Are you saying that successful people can't care about social causes? That making money somehow makes you a hypocrite if you also want to help others? I'm saying that when you position yourself as a voice for the oppressed while living like royalty, people are going to call out the contradiction, Joy replied without missing a beat. And frankly, the victim narrative gets old when you're clearly doing just fine. Victim narrative? Meghan's voice cracked slightly with indignation. Joy, do you have any idea what it's like to have your every move scrutinized, your every word twisted, your family relationships dissected in public? Do you know what it's like to have people question your motives for everything you do? Joy leaned forward, her expression hardening. Actually, yes, I do. I've been in this business for 40 years. I've been attacked, criticized, and had my personal life dragged through the mud more times than I can count. The difference is, I don't go on international television to complain about it while making millions from the attention. That is completely unfair, Meghan said, her voice shaking now with anger. You're reducing my entire experience to a money grab, and that's not only wrong, it's cruel. What's cruel is using your platform to attack your own family while profiting from the drama, Joy fired back. What's cruel is positioning yourself as a humanitarian while your actions suggest you're more interested in celebrity than charity. The studio audience was now visibly uncomfortable, with some people shifting in their seats and others exchanging worried glances. The show's producer was gesturing frantically from behind the cameras, but Joy seemed completely focused on her. Guessed my actions. Meghan's voice was rising with each word. Joy, you don't know anything about my actions beyond what you read in gossip magazines. You're sitting there making judgments about my character based on headlines and rumors. I'm making judgments based on your own words, Joy countered. You've given plenty of interviews where you've contradicted yourself. You've made claims that have been disputed by multiple sources. You've painted yourself as a victim while simultaneously cashing in on the situation. Cashing in? Meghan stood up slightly in her chair, her face flushed with anger. You think I wanted any of this? You think I chose to have my privacy invaded? My family relationships destroyed? My mental health attacked? I think you chose to marry into the most famous family in the world. And then you chose to monetize the fallout when it didn't go the way you wanted, Joy said bluntly. And now you're upset that people are pointing out the obvious contradictions in your narrative. That is absolutely outrageous, Meghan said, her voice now shaking with fury. You're suggesting that I planned some kind of elaborate scheme too. Profit from personal trauma. Do you hear how insane that sounds? What sounds insane is claiming you were naive about what marrying into the royal family would entail. Joy replied, her voice getting louder to match Meghan's energy. What? Sounds insane is expecting sympathy while you're living better than 99% of the world's population. So because I'm financially comfortable, I'm not allowed to speak about injustice, Meghan demanded. Because I have privilege, I can't use my platform to help others. That's the most backwards logic I've ever heard. You can do whatever you want, Joy said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But don't expect people to take your social justice warrior act seriously when you're more concerned with your brand than your cause. My brand? Meghan's voice cracked with disbelief. Joy, everything I do gets turned into a brand discussion. I can't support a charity without people claiming it's for publicity. I can't speak about issues I care about without being accused of grandstanding. It's impossible to win. Maybe that's because your actions don't match your words, Joy suggested. Maybe if you spent less time in front of cameras talking about your struggles and more time actually doing the work without the fanfare, people would take you more seriously. Are you kidding me right now? Meghan's composure was completely gone now. I do plenty of work that doesn't get covered by the media, but somehow the only stories that get attention are the ones that paint me in a negative light. Poor you, Joy said with mock sympathy. It must be so hard being famous and wealthy and having to deal with criticism. Really, my heart breaks for you. The sarcasm in Joy's voice was unmistakable, and it hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her face went pale, then flushed red with anger. You know what, Joy? This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that makes it impossible for women to support each other, Meghan said, her voice trembling with rage. Instead of having a respectful conversation about important issues, you've turned this into a personal attack based on gossip and assumptions. I've turned this into a reality check, Joy shot back, and clearly you're not used to people calling you out on your contradictions. Contradictions. Meghan's voice was now loud enough that even the studio audience could feel the tension. The only contradiction I see is a woman who claims to support other women while tearing them down on national television. Joy's expression darkened, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed genuinely angry rather than just provocative. Don't you dare lecture me about supporting women. I've been fighting for women's rights since before you were born. I don't need lessons from someone who throws around accusations of racism and sexism every time they face legitimate criticism. And there it is, Meghan said, her voice now cold with fury. The real reason you're attacking me? You can't stand that. I've called out the systems that you've been comfortable working with in your entire career. The studio was now electric with tension, and it was becoming clear that this confrontation was spiraling beyond anything that could be easily contained or edited. Both women were fully committed to their positions, and neither seemed willing to back down. Systems I've been comfortable working within. Joy's voice rose to match Meghan's intensity. Lady, I've been challenging systems since you were in diapers. Don't you dare suggest that I'm part of some establishment conspiracy? Meghan fired back, leaning forward aggressively. Platform to speak truth to power. Is it because I'm doing it more effectively than you ever did? The audience audibly gasped at the boldness of the statement. Joy's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, anger, and then something that looked almost like admiration for the sheer audacity of the challenge. More effectively, Joy's laugh was sharp and bitter. Honey, you've been famous for 5 minutes, and you think you invented activism? I was fighting battles when you were still trying to get bit parts on cable television shows. And look where it got you, Meghan shot back without hesitation. At least. I'm trying to make actual change instead of just talking about it. Actual change. Name one concrete thing you've accomplished besides making yourself famous and wealthy. I've given voice to people who didn't have platforms. Meghan rattled off, her voice getting faster and more passionate with each point. What have you done besides sit in this chair and tear down other women? I've been doing this job since before you were born, Joy snapped, her professional composure completely abandoned now. And yes, I've called out hypocrisy when I see it, and right now, I'm seeing it in high definition. The only hypocrisy I see is coming from someone who claims to be a feminist while spending the last 20 minutes trying to destroy another woman's reputation. Meghan countered, her voice shaking with rage. This isn't journalism, Joy. This is a hit job? A hit job. Joy's eyes blazed with fury. You came on my show, not the other way around. You wanted the platform. You got it. Don't blame me because you can't handle honest questions. Honest questions. Meghan's voice cracked with disbelief. You haven't asked a single honest question this entire time. You've made accusations, spread gossip, and attacked my character. That's not journalism. That's bullying. Oh, now I'm a bully. Joy's voice dripped with sarcasm. Poor little Meghan can't handle criticism from the mean old lady on television. Anger, Joy. You have no idea what the real world looks like. Sit down, Joy commanded, her voice sharp with authority. You're on my show, and you'll conduct yourself appropriately. Your show. Meghan's voice rose to nearly a shout. This isn't journalism, it's a circus, and you're the ringmaster, trying to turn me into a dancing bear for your audience's entertainment. The studio audience was now visibly agitated, with some people standing up and others looking toward the exits. The show's producer was frantically signaling to security, but the confrontation was moving too fast for anyone to intervene effectively. If you don't like the questions, there's the door, Joy said, pointing dramatically toward the exit. Meghan's voice was now hoarse from shouting. The only questionable choice I made was thinking. I could have an honest conversation with someone who's more interested in creating drama than seeking truth. Truth, Joy laughed harshly. You wouldn't know truth if it bit you on your privileged behind. You've been spinning stories and playing victim for so long, I don't think you remember what actually happened anymore. How dare you, Meghan said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. How dare you sit there and tell me what I've experienced? You have no idea what I've been through, what my family has endured, what it costs to speak out against powerful institutions. What it costs. Joy's voice was incredulous. You're disgusting, Meghan said, her voice filled with genuine revulsion. You're absolutely disgusting. I came here to talk about helping people, and you've turned it into this ugly, hateful spectacle. "I've exposed the truth about your brand of performative activism," Joy countered. "And clearly, you can't handle it when someone calls you out on your act." "My act?" Meghan's voice was now barely controlled. "Joy, the only act I see is yours. Pretending to be a journalist while you're really just a gossip columnist with a television show." "That's it," Joy said, standing up from her own chair. "I've had enough of your sanctimonious nonsense." "Fine by me," Meghan snapped back, reaching for her microphone. "Wouldn't want to stay on a show that treats guests like this anyway." "Good," Joy said, her voice cold with finality. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." "Oh, I'm going," Meghan said, yanking off her microphone with perhaps more force than necessary, "because I have better things to do than waste my time with someone who's clearly lost touch with reality." The studio was in chaos now, with security finally moving in, producers shouting directions, and the audience buzzing with shock and excitement. Meghan gathered her purse and stood up, her movements sharp and angry. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a commercial break," Joy announced to the cameras, though her voice was still shaking with anger. "Conduct myself." Meghan turned back one final time, her eyes blazing. "I conducted myself with dignity until you decided to turn this into a character assassination. The only person who should be embarrassed by this display is you." "Security, please escort Ms. Markle out," Joy said, her voice now deadly calm. Apparently, she's confused about where she is and how television works. "I know exactly where I am," Meghan said, as security approached. "I'm on a show that's more interested in tearing people down than building them up." "Time, Joy. I genuinely hope you find whatever it is you're looking for in life." Joy watched her leave, then turned back to the cameras with a shrug. "Well, folks, that's what happens when reality meets rhetoric. Some people just can't handle the truth." The cameras finally stopped rolling, and the studio remained in stunned silence for several long moments. Nobody had expected a routine celebrity interview to explode into such a spectacular confrontation. That's the story of how a simple interview became one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. What do you think? Did Joy cross the line? Or was Meghan too sensitive to handle legitimate criticism? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else.